Hello and welcome to the Kent edition of the Roundtable Roadshow, recorded live at Champneys Eastwell Manor with James McComas, our co-host, who we will be interviewing and finding out about why he got involved in this project and what is on the forefront of his mind when it comes to dealing with challenges in our industry. We'll also be deep diving into ROI of people and culture to optimize operations and retention. We'll be hearing from HOSPA and their training programs that hoteliers have access to, and from Hospitality Action around some of the key challenges hospitality staff face and how they can be dealt with. Then we find a breakout session and hear from the hoteliers in the room as to how they address some of these incredibly pertinent issues around culture and people.
Hotelier's Voice. Exploring opportunity in hospitality with Ryan Haynes. Hear from the people making a difference. From revenue to operations, marketing to digitalization. Learn the thinking behind their decisions.
Hello and welcome to Hotelier's Voice. We are at the Kent edition of the Roundtable Roadshow here at the Champneys Eastwell Manor, and I'm going to be very pleased today that we're going to be looking at ROI in hospitality and people and how to get guests to spend more. Throughout this morning, we'll be hearing back from some of the hoteliers in the room as to some of the challenges that they're experiencing. But first, I've got an interview with James McComas, our co-host here, General Manager. James, thank you very much for inviting us here to host this Kent edition. You're no stranger to this event because I roped you in, or you came along to the first one we did as part of the roadshow in the New Forest.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Down at the manor, it was a great day. I didn't really know what to expect when I came down, and I think if you had played the little snippet that you made me deliver for you at the end of the day, which you didn't, it was no hard feelings, then you would have seen that, you know, the feeling of collaboration that comes out of the room and being able to have these conversations which sit in all our minds as operators, and you know they'd speak to us and they breed a little bit of insecurity or they breed a little bit of uncertainty, and being able to throw these ideas around in a forum that can provide a positivity and a way forward and perspective is really beneficial.
Obviously, from that clip, because that was the first video that was made, right? We noticed that it's lonely at the top. And that was quite a common theme, wasn't it, in that room, actually? And the opportunity that having this space to actually unpick and dissect some of the key challenges was a space you don't normally get.
No, exactly right. And, you know, even just in the little networking session we had before coming into the room, you know, Mike and Paul and I have already connected. And one of the first things that came out was the point about demand and the weird challenges that we're all facing. And, you know, we're not a super close proximity group of hotels in Kent. We're pretty dotted about. So yeah, the opportunity to get together and realize that you're not alone on your lonely little perch at the top of your hotel is very reassuring.
Now let's unpick, some of the challenges that you're experiencing, because it's, everything's been thrown at hospitality for the last 6 years. You guys have perhaps become one of the most agile industry that you could possibly be. But they keep throwing more things. This year, 18 months, a lot of unpredictable demands. What are you seeing here at Champneys Eastwell Manor?
That really the only consistency is inconsistency. If we're looking at demand patterns and the ability to forecast, it's becoming nigh on impossible. And I feel like I've been saying for the last 3 years that lead times can't get any shorter, and yet they are. It's shorter and it's shorter and it's shorter, and we're now seeing at Eastwell anyway. We're now seeing business come in on the day for the day, which is ridiculous because we're a country house hotel. We're not centrally located. You're not passing the door. You don't naturally sort of just find yourself here in the middle of your journey. So what is it that's driving that change? Because it presents an operational challenge that particularly the country house market isn't necessarily used to responding to. We like having our business on the books and planning and going, okay, so this is how we're going to focus. This is how we're going to drive the experience. This is what we're going to do, because that's what people come to us for. But if you're rocking up on the day, that's not what you're coming for. So we have to adapt our mindset, and that's a real challenge, because we haven't had to think like that before. And equally, it breeds uncertainty about your longer strategy. Even market segments which you would think should still be longer lead aren't. We're still taking weddings for this summer. It's June.
Wow.
Right? And we're still taking wedding business. 2 days ago, no, yesterday, in fact, we exchanged contracts on an exclusive use wedding for September. Now, it's not a small event, but, and okay, we've got 3 months to plan for it and deliver it, no problem. But how that must indicate significant changes in market behavior, in people's behavior that we don't yet understand.
Do you recognise it in yourself at all as a consumer? I mean, do you feel your behaviour has changed to be a bit more last minute when you're away from the hotel?
I've always been last minute.
A planner in hospitality, a mess beyond.
I spend so much of my time planning other people's lives. I can't plan my own as well.
Okay, let's go back to another question. You came away from the New Forest. Do you remember some of the things that you came away from and then sort of like implemented within your hotel and had conversations about on the back of that? Because that was near 6 months ago now.
It was. I think the thing that sort of stuck with me following that meeting is that we had a broadly similar sort of range of topics that were being thrown around, but the takeaways that kept coming back to time and time again always came back to the team, ultimately, and the way we treat the team, look after the team, drive the team, etc. And that was equally reassuring, enlightening, because we can be guilty as operators of sort of having our little pots, saying, okay, now I'm focusing on demand generation, or now I'm focusing on the money I'm going to spend on this next project, or now I'm focusing on the team. But the reality was that at each point through those conversations in the New Forest, everything kept coming back to the team and the engagement. And
It was. I mean, Sharon Rockley there, obviously from Limewood Hotels, has a lot of experience and things to share around people and culture. And this is precisely why, that first section is looking at, the investment you're making in people. Where is that return, and how do you get that return? And I think particularly in the conversations I've had this morning, that agility is key with consumers changing so much and last minute demand coming in. How do you go back to 20 years ago where you said, right, we need you in tomorrow at 6, to a generation that, dictates to you when they're coming in and how many hours that they're working? How do we turn the tables on that in a positive way that enables us as hospitality businesses to be successful and to give them something, but also make sure that we're delivering for the guests? Because unexpected demand requires unexpected resources, and you need to pull those from somewhere.
Exactly.
And no one wants robots, so we're discovering in hospitality.
No, but how do you build flexibility into an unflexible tool ultimately?
James, what you've just done, you've just broken us out into our first breakouts.
Great.
So that is now your task for the next 10 minutes, okay? Look at that. Let's talk about the patterns that you're experiencing. Let's look at that demand that you need to manage and how you look at managing your team. Over to you guys. As we always do, it's just a quick summary. Some of the key points that came out during the conversations. First, David Hayward from Oracle.
Hello, everyone. So we were kind of discussing the issue, and it was mainly around the staff, getting the staff, the younger staff, the cost of the younger staff, the commitment from the younger staff. So we were blaming everything on young people. And then we kind of looked at, well, why is that? So, is it as a result of lockdown that has kind of caused kids today to not have that commitment that we had when we were all kind of getting into hospitality, when we were all doing kind of 24-hour shifts and leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning? And then we kind of looked at, so what is the solution? Is it kind of using technology to a certain degree? It is. So we could be using things like QR codes on table ordering, self-check-in. But then again, we have to look at the property. A property like this is not going to have people kind of checking in on like kiosks at the front desk, for example. So I don't think we came to a conclusion. Did we come to a conclusion? No, but we had a good we had a good round though.
Got Giles here. This is the first. Thank you for jumping in so early. Giles from Browning Court Hotel.
So we discussed that focusing on retention of our culture and our teams is really important. I think we were discussing that generally outside of London and the kind of boroughs, I would classify us on the cusp of that, but we're finding a blend of staff is good. Having older staff members in the team kind of made a bit more consistency with the service offering that was being offered, and gave us a chance to train some of those younger people that are in place. Last minute demands causing a bit of a challenge on stretching the teams. I mean, I had that issue last night. I think we sold 30 rooms on the day, and then you got more people then wanting dinner, and more people wanting to be served. And then have you got enough chefs in the kitchen? Have you got enough produce? Over ordering on food, I think we discussed, was a challenge, and all of those things are quite expensive. And then we discussed also kind of focusing on retaining our teams, really. So make sure there's plenty of training schemes and opportunities to develop those people so they don't want to disappear or move on, really. So
You're alluding to our next topic. Thank you very much indeed, Giles. Very interesting there, that's for sure. I mean, especially around the technology aspect of how does AI help you predict demands that's unpredicted, especially when it comes to making sure you've got enough stock in. On this table, who took some notes, I'm handing over to a Prem from BiteLux.
So we continued on the conversation about short lead times, and we were just discussing how post-COVID, hotels obviously wanted to open everything up, but this issue of shorter lead times seems to be common among many hotels. And part of the issue is guests still have that high expectation, right? Whether they're booking 2 weeks in advance or on the day, and they come down to breakfast and they're expecting everything to be available. And there's obviously tools out there which can make life easier, but as it was alluded to earlier on, it's a balance, right? You don't necessarily want to have a kiosk at check-in, and there are some low-hanging fruit ways of collecting that information without investing in expensive tools. Like at the time of booking, if it's direct, you can easily ask the questions that you need in order for your team to prepare for guests arriving the next day. So I think the theme very much was it's just about guest expectations, and I think they'd just be better managed given the constraints that hotels have resourcing-wise.
Thank you very much indeed. Having heard what some of you were saying, I wrote a couple of things down myself. Was this idea of, do teams, people have a sense of duty turning up for your colleagues rather than just for themselves? And how do they engage in the work that they're there for? And that idea of culture, I can't remember who mentioned this, culture can be ruined by demand. That was you, wasn't it, Paul? I think that's an interesting one. I think that then falls on our shoulders as leaders, actually. So, looking at the second section of costs, we're going to be speaking to HOSPA's Janel Clark about succeeding with people, Hospitality's Action's Nicola Phillips on supporting staff emotionally, David Hayward from Oracle will look at staff and tech adoption, and Alessandra Leone from Focus on Hospitality will talk to us about what happens with staff when tech fails. So first, Janel, if I can get you up here, please. You are looking after the professional development side at HOSPA. Does quite a lot of programs involved. Do you support people throughout their careers?
We do, yeah. So we run at professional development. I think there are some HOSPA members in the room, so hopefully you all know who HOSPA are. So we're the Hospitality Professionals Association, membership association, and you can all become members if you aren't. But we run a professional development side of the association, and we offer training around the commercial side of the business. So not operational and guest service, but more your revenue management, finance, asset management, commercial restaurant management, those sort of programs. So we take people, we have all of our programs are at 3 levels. So we bring on, or learners come in from hotels at any level. So it might be someone who's working on reception who goes to a revenue meeting every month and is not really involved, but wants to understand more. So then there would be an introductory level that they might want to study at. And then that goes right the way through 3 different levels up to a diploma.
So from actually helping hotels create a framework, a career ladder, identify or be aware of different areas across the business, there's 3 core areas that you've got there.
Yeah. It's about, I don't even want to say it out loud, breaking down the silos. I mean, we've been saying this for 20 years, but it's about getting people to understand that bigger picture of how the business runs.
So there's no real level of experience required because you have the different levels of courses involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important because we were just talking about younger generation and what they're looking for. And I think sometimes we can, and me included, and I've got 5 kids, and I can be the most negative about that generation. Partly my own fault because, as we said, we've spoilt them as kids. So now they've got that feeling of entitlement or whatever. But what they do like is what they want when they come into work is that they want to know where the progression is. They want to know where they're going to develop, where can they go. And I think we were talking in breakfast today, and we've been talking as a group in the last sort of 24 hours about how much we love hospitality and how we've had great careers in hospitality, and how come they don't understand how good this is, because this is just the most amazing sector to work in. And I think we're not very good at explaining to newer members of staff what the opportunities are and where they could go. And I'll be honest, like one of my daughters just started in a hotel last week. She's up in Manchester. And she's just left uni. This is her first full-time job. She's done what everybody does, worked in hospitality while she was studying and it wasn't a real job. And now she's suddenly thinking, perhaps hospitality, I've enjoyed it, and perhaps this is the way forward. And I'm so excited because I think she's just going to have the best opportunity. But I'm also so nervous that the hotel, she's gone into a small, independent, 20-bedroom wedding sort of C&B venue. And I just feel like, God, I hope they treat her well. I hope she has a good experience because she's a potential leader of the future. But it will be very easy for her to just go, do you know what? But, I had to do extra shifts, or I didn't want to do, they weren't very good. And I think we've got to look after our staff. And what will be good for her is that someone will say to her, look, in 6 months, you could be doing this. In a year, you could be doing this. We can put you on this development program where you can get to wherever. Because we all know, in this industry, you can progress so quickly. If you've got someone who's good in your team and you see that spark is there, because we've all said, this is a people industry. And I think sometimes we forget our own people. We focus too much on that people being the guest. And if we don't look after our team, if you think about the ROI, the cost of that staff turnover and having to constantly be recruiting or retraining staff, if we could just find a way to keep our staff and retain that staff and then not have that extra cost. And if we've got happy staff, we've got happy guests, and again, I'm preaching to the converted here. We all know this already, but it's just, I think as an industry, we just have to keep remembering as well that if you've got happy staff, you've got happy guests. If you've got a great guest experience, your guests are happy, you've got good reviews. If you've got good reviews, you can put your prices up because that's where the value is. And we all know that, I can tell my background's revenue management. So it's like, okay, how important is it that these staff are out there, they're happy, they're feeling that someone cares about them and we're investing. And maybe that's part of this, the factor that we think is missing, this entitlement or duty, or we would go in and do an extra shift because, we don't want to let the side down. Maybe that is missing. But then how do we rebuild that?
I think there's an opportunity for us at this moment that we can grab, because I discovered that there's GCSEs now that are hospitality and catering. They didn't exist before, right? So I've got a kid down my road who's going to be selecting that. My nephew has selected that, and he's getting experience in weddings and events. And I'm like, wow, this is an opportunity right now. If they're studying hospitality and catering at 14, 15, 16 years old, to grab them and show what the opportunities are and be part of that learning experience. Janel, thank you very much indeed. Now we'll get Nicola Phillips up from Hospitality Action. And we talked about, people not wanting to come into work so much. And there is an element of needing to consider mental health, well-being. Where are we seeing currently the concerns that hospitality workers have?
I mean, look, I think there's a lot, and probably people in this room are fully aware of them. I think number one is financial insecurity. We talked about COVID, and not to talk about it again, but there is definitely a hangover from that. I know a lot of us think, oh, that's gone, that's past, but there is definitely a hangover from that. And we are supporting a lot of people who are in full-time employment, but who really are in tricky situations. And, not to kind of, lower the vibe, but, there might be people within the workforce here that you're just not aware of, because there's an element of pride, there's an element of, I don't want to talk about this, but financial instability is definitely one. And then things like burnout. I mean, look, rightly or wrongly, that might always be prevalent in our industry, but given the nature of the industry that it is, it's amazing, but it is high stress, fast paced. So yeah, burnout is another. But I think thirdly, and we've touched on it, it's also around sort of culture and feeling that they're valued, and that there is actually more. I think culture and progression counts as much as pay, right? So it's about sort of having that understanding of what's available within the industry, and knowing that there's a future there, and it's not just a kind of stopgap.
Talk about financial security a little more, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
If they're in full-time work, why is that? Where are they getting that sense of insecurity from? That and the COVID, they just dropped everybody?
No, I think look, cost of living, we don't need to go into that. That's another topic in itself. But I think there is a lot of kind of uncertainty, pressure. I mean, it feeds into what we've been talking about today around uncertain hours, not guaranteed income, and things like that. So it does, cost of living is insane. And I think our industry is quite hit by that. There are people, as I say, who are in full-time employment but do have bailiffs knocking on the door, and it's really difficult to kind of manage. And I think pride comes into it as well. This isn't necessarily a hospitality thing, but pride comes into it. People don't want to talk about it; they just want to kind of carry on and hope that it's sort of okay. So that is something that we support a lot with.
Now, Hospitality Action does provide quite a bit of support and a network there. What type of support and management does hoteliers need to be looking at, and hospitality professionals, to try to alleviate those three pressures?
Yeah, I think the thing that's really important to say, and we've again touched on it here, is around. We don't encourage kind of people, especially in your roles, to be counsellors, right? It's something we talk about a lot, where people feel like, gosh, I'm taking on this role of an accidental counsellor. There is, of course, a duty of care to kind of support their teams, but don't take on that role of becoming a counsellor. And I think this is where we come in. You are trying to run your operations, you're trying to care for your staff, you're trying to be aware of what's going on, but it's about sort of saying, okay, what can we do in-house? Because there is an element of, it doesn't all sit with you, right? And it shouldn't. And that's where you then need to kind of signpost out to us at Hospitality Action, as an example. So things like our employee assistance program is, we sort of try to describe it as an extension of your teams. So we're not kind of getting involved of policies and procedures, but it's about knowing peace of mind that when something happens, you're not trying to sort of retrospectively sit on Google and go, how do we deal with this situation? Whether that's something with a member of the team or something that's going on, we're here to kind of support that and kind of take away that pressure that sits with I think businesses a lot of the time.
I guess at the same time, from a supervisory and a management position, there needs to be an awareness of this. I had a conversation with the head of HR Europe for Marriott, and he said one of the things that he's particularly noticed in the last few years is that as soon as a staff member comes in, you have to, or it's pretty much best to go, how are you? To really understand where they are and to take note of that person, not just, oh, this is your task list, can you get on with this? And you need to help supervisors and managers really understand how to manage that side of things, that manage the emotional element of staff today.
You're exactly right. And it's about sort of, I think we're all, understanding and on board with the notion of it's okay to not be okay and to be having these conversations in work. But it's about, are we really having them? Or are we just doing a sort of tick box exercise of saying, are you okay? And then actually being afraid of the answer and what to do there. So we work with people about building that confidence to have those conversations and be comfortable with them and have them genuinely. And I think, reflecting back on what we've been talking about now, I mean, it's not a silver bullet answer, but I think it's about having honest conversations. So, GM to, restaurant host, let's have an honest conversation here. Yes, there's a hierarchy or whatever, but people are people. So it's about sort of saying, and I think hopefully that would then feed into the point of why would you want to come to work? Because you kind of build that rapport and we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to strive to the same end goal, right? So have these honest conversations. If someone's not okay, sometimes it's about maybe just making slight adjustments, and that actually has a long-term impact than trying to wait for a crisis point. But yeah, look, people are the biggest asset. It's about trying to look after them. I know it's not easy, and some things sort of sound nice on paper and just don't work practically, but it's about, I think, honest conversations and just making sure that we're doing our best for our people, really.
Excellent. Nicola, thank you very much
Thank you.
indeed. During our roundtable roadshows, we have the opportunity to hear from hoteliers in the room and just get some of their perspectives. First, we hear from Paul Pearce, the General Manager at Chilston Park Hotel Handpicked Hotels, about how he engages with the local community. Paul,
Tom.
could I ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind? You are involved in a number of programs to go out into schools, do that outreach. How is that helping you tell the story of hospitality?
So I think from a Kent perspective, I know Michael and James do similar things, but I think it's about growing hospitality as a career, not just my hotel, but, if there's people located closer to Eastwell, then, it's about seeing the industry perspective. That's where it starts, because if you can nurture them and get that little thought in their brain when they're in college, then starting them on the career path and getting them excited and then growing them into bigger and better things, it kind of makes the process seamless.
Where did you start in hospitality?
I actually didn't start in hospitality. I was a stuntman for TV and film.
Oh, wow.
And then always worked in restaurants and bars because I wasn't obviously getting enough money through the other side. So came up through the ranks through restaurants and bars, and then, hotel management and into GM.
One of the things that you initiate is having, I believe, a manager available during a week. Is that right? Tell us a bit more about, is it the manager, how your managers engage with your teams on a weekly basis?
Yeah, so I've done some stuff with Burnt Chef Project as an ambassador. So we believe just talking to your team. I think you said it earlier, but we have a manager a week that just sits in the canteen on a set Thursday. And it's a drop-in session. So if any member of staff is feeling a bit run down or something, they can drop in, talk to that HOD, and then we can do it in a nice way of how to make them feel better and what we can do to help them and reassure them.
Really interesting initiative.
Some weeks you have nothing. And I think it is about breaking down that pride barrier. It's about letting people understand that what they then say, there is action. Because I think if you sit there and say, oh, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do that, and then nothing happens, you'll lose that mentality altogether and no one will ever come. But I think once you get one or two people come and they experience that change, then you'll start to get more motion. But we started off, I think I sat there for about 6 weeks with no one turning up. I then went out and one of my other HODs came in and they had 4 or 5 people. So I think there is that barrier of who they want to talk to as well. So we found that switching it from a HOD, because it might be that they don't want to see the reception manager because the issue is a reception manager. So then talking to the housekeeping manager might be the way forward. And I think it's making sure that it's not a problem centre. We often turn around to people and say, what would your solution be? If you've got an issue and you know your solution, what we didn't want it to be is just you drop in and just moan for sort of an hour. It was more about creating solutions and that coming from the employee rather than from us. But sometimes just being someone to sit and listen is enough to sort of get them to the next step of, if it is a financial problem, there are things that we can do. It might not be my hotel, but we may be able to push them to another hotel or get them overtime in different places. So,
any takeaways from the hoteliers on this table?
I think the generations now are more glued to their phones, and that interaction, I think that just sort of transpires with the challenges that we're up against as industry leaders and how to break that. People would rather socialise with their phone as opposed to going out and drinking, and it's trying to adapt to that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we did say that trying to get everybody from a hotel together for one formatted team bonding activity isn't always necessarily the best way of doing it. Sometimes maybe there needs to be a few little events across different departments, or looking at trying to get the camaraderie and that engagement with staff, and maybe in smaller teams, and doing different activities for different types of different departments or different people within your overall staff. It's worth a try nowadays. What we did 10, 20 years ago isn't necessarily the way to carry on doing these things nowadays, and even the incentives that we used to offer traditionally don't appeal to everybody nowadays because circumstances have changed so much. So we do have to definitely try different approaches.
Thank you. I mean, certainly incentives was a common discussion across these three groups here. And as you say, we need to rethink, we perhaps need to spend as well, not just having conversations amongst us as management and leaders, but also having different generation groups sort of come together and have focus groups with them to understand, what works and what doesn't. Don't forget to check out part 2 of the Kent edition as we dive into experiences utilising a space as a whole across a wider country house resort, and how to optimise that revenue across all amenities and throughout the guest journey.